Hey folks, welcome to the show, episode 94, Last Touch Rule Change. We talked about this rule change that was introduced for this season. It was talked about last year and brought in for this year. We've talked about it on the podcast. We said how it minimises the ruckman around the ground. It doesn't use them around the ground as much as they used to. There's less boundary throw-ins. There's less stoppages. And we talked about those issues. We talked about how that has impacted the game. We talked about hamstring gate, the amount of times players are running, and how that's impacted them. Well, now that being said, we've had a rule change on top of a rule change. So during the week, it was revealed that a key change to the lasso rule were players who dive to touch the ball to stop the penalty after their teammate kicks or handballs the ball to the line will now be penalised for insufficient intent. They have to make a genuine attempt to keep the ball in play. So the officials can't even get the rule right to start with, right? We had the game impacted at Geelong versus the Crows. There's no doubt that that was a free kick to the Crows. They didn't get it. The ball went down the other end and resulted in a goal for Geelong just instantly. And that swung the game. Whether you can say, well, the Cats are the better team the last 10 minutes, that doesn't matter at that time. That was an impact on the game. And football's a very confident game. If you don't have confidence, you put your head down one little bit and your opponent gets a sniff, they will take that opportunity and they'll run with it. What we're talking about here is just fairly adjudicated. There was consequences for that free kick that wasn't paid. It went down the other end. And ironically, this week, over all the football media, whatever stream you watch it on, not one channel, one episode, or however you want to categorize it, criticise the fact that may have cost Adelaide the game. From the footy show to everything on Foxtel to everything that you see through agenda setters, footy classifieds, there was not one outlet that actually said, hang on, that was a bit wrong. They got that wrong. There was, even I said the coach should have stuck up for his team a bit more, and I understand the fines that they get through Matthew Nicks and the Crows. And look, I'm not the biggest Crows fan. You can see right there, it's quite obvious that I am not a Crows fan. But nor does that mean that I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to say what the actual issue is. And I'm a fair man. This podcast was about fairness. It's been created for fairness. And I wanted to be a voice of, a voice of the voiceless out there, None of the media or football outlets did any of this. And this is a way that, as a fan or a footballer that played football, you can say, that's just not right. And to hear during the week they're going to change a rule on top of a rule and then add it in that's insufficient, that you touch the ball out before it goes out, it's just the definition of just stupidity. They're so stubborn and they're doubling down with this rule, the AFL, they're just doubling down. They're just, instead of just going, okay, maybe we just got this rule wrong, we're just going to throw it in. Because you can say, oh, well, it looks good because teams just get the ball and they kick it straight back in. We've said how it rewards a team that doesn't deserve the free kick. And now you work hard to get the ball from your defensive line, you kick it, and you just miss kick a little bit, it bounces out. The other defensive lineup is getting rewarded for nothing. They just get the ball given when it would have been a stoppage. Would the players still be doing their hamstrings? Well, probably not. Would it stop some of it? Yeah, maybe. It's definitely a stoppage in the game. Definitely slowed the game down more. I wouldn't say it slowed the game to the point where people were complaining it was slow either, so they changed a rule for no reason. They have it here in South Australia. That doesn't mean I don't like the rule. I thought it always impacted the fact that it takes less boundary throw-ins, especially at the lower levels like the SANFL. That, it takes away the advantage of players doing stoppages and learning boundary throwing craft. Whether it's only a percentage, could be 15, could be 20% of boundary throw-ins not left, it could be 33%. They'll come out with a number at the end of the season because they're going to stick with this rule. But not once did the only one that even mentioned about this rule and the rule changes were Dan Does Footy, and John Ralph wrote about it because that's his job to report what's happening in the AFL. Okay, and there wasn't one person that sort of goes, "Why can't we just go back to the old rule?" Because that's just the most common sense one. Insufficient attempt was you throw. They wanted to fix it because of that. Now they're actually bringing back an insufficient attempt on top of that. A rule change on top of a rule change to fix a rule change to get a rule change to fix a rule change. Rule change. Do you get what I mean? It's just, and I wasn't a big fan of it because I like the ruckman in the game. I think they should be there as much as possible. They don't get enough credit. It's always the midfield. Nice power forward kicks a goal. Maybe a small forward kicks a goal. They celebrate. Okay, the defenders, they don't get much credit in the game here. I'll be honest about that. They do by their teammates, but I'm talking about the wider recognition, including Brownlows and all these sort of stuff. It's always just a midfielder. Okay, I just feel that the game's integrity has been compromised by rule changes. It's had distractions. It's caused injuries. It's caused confusion. It's caused games. It's caused momentum. It's caused goals to go to the other end when the team shouldn't have got it. They can't even get the rule right to begin with, and they're debating, and then they sit there and they say that it slows the game down. The umpires are officiating with each other whether it was touched or not for about 40 seconds. So when they could just throw it up and they would continue, had play. So if it goes to me and if they try to say, well, it speeds up the game, well, you can look at all these other little factors and you could say, well, is it a positive? Was it a net positive or is it a net loss? And when they're debating, when they can't get the rules right, when it's costing games, when it swings momentum, when it gives free kicks to teams that don't deserve it because they didn't work hard to get the ball out of the defensive end, bounces out by a missed kick. Now players, when it bounces out, they try to touch it before it goes over the line. How are they going to adjudicate that? In all seriousness, it's become a bit of a joke. It seriously has. I love the AFL. I'm not here to be a negative person. I'm here to highlight a negative, and we want to turn it into a positive. That's how I talk on here. That's how I roll. That's how I want. I want positivity to come out of this. Sometimes don't change what's not broke. Don't change a rule. And then people get confused. And then people don't realize it's not. Players, when this rule first started, thought it was a free kick when it bounced outside in the 50s. That's how confusing it was. Okay, some players didn't even realize they let it just bounce out. The start, they obviously learnt now, but at the very start, it's costing games. That's my 2 cents, folks. I'm going to leave it on that note. I think I said I needed to be said in the podcast. Like and subscribe. Thank you.